Okay, and welcome back. And almost like the sieverts leaking out of the various reactor buildings at Fukushima, the truth is trickling through. We knew most of it weeks and weeks and weeks ago, but it's interesting to see TEPCO finally backing in to the corner they painted themselves into and trying to act as if they're standing on the front porch ready to walk out into the sunlight. They're lying. They've been lying transparently. They've been lying viciously in terms of putting human life at risk. We know now that children were not at all given the common courtesy of having been warned, either directly, if they're old enough, or through their parents, that they were being clearly inundated internally with iodine-131. We could go on and on. There's an awful lot to talk about. Radioactive sewage sludge, almost at the same levels of Fukushima, now found in Tokyo. What does that tell you? It tells you a lot. The issue, though, and it really bothers me, of the Japanese government hiding the massive iodine-131 internal organ dosage in children is particularly despicable. This is just wrong. Over 4,900 nuclear industry workers have, they say, visited the Fukushima 1 plant at Daiichi, and they're all suffering from major to minor internal radioactivity, radiation damage. Internal. Now, that means they inhaled, unlike President Clinton, or they ate dinner in the commissary there, which a lot of workers apparently have claimed is the cause of their internal radiation damage, eating the food there, all contaminated. There is so much going on there in terms of radioactivity. Anyone who works around those buildings is in serious trouble. The debris outside the buildings, reactor 1 in point of fact, is so high, it's pumping out 1,000 millisieverts an hour. That's 1 sievert an hour in the debris outside of reactor 3, and the same with reactor 1. This is fatal. It's a fatal dose. So they're trying to use robots to go in there and push debris around. But what are they pushing around? They're pushing deadly radiation around. What are they going to do with it? This is all just disgusting. There's a lot to talk about. Dr. Bill Deagle is back with us tonight to help us bring you up to date. So sit back and prepare to hear reality. Hello, Bill. Welcome back.
Welcome back. I wish we had better news, but the more of the analysis we see from experts like Arne Gundersen, work that you're doing, work by Mr. Shimatsu in Hong Kong, his contacts, my contacts through Chris Harris in Japan, they're nuclear safety engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Situation goes beyond the insanity of the Keystone Cops. This is just ridiculous. And, of course, the latest is now we're even getting people like Angela Merkel in the news trying to blame her bad showing on what happened in Japan with the nuclear industry. And, so people don't get this wrong. I think that we should be rid of all ALL, all fission-type reactors. The first thing is we have to phase them out with enough money so that putting them into shutdown improperly is more dangerous than continuing them. But we need to start shutting down the ones that are on fault lines, like the ones that are in tsunami zones, like San Onofre here in California and Diablo Canyon, ones that are along the New Madrid fault system where the heavy weight of water could trigger off a big earthquake there, and they're already in danger of flooding. 3 reactors we talked about last week are in danger of actually being swamped. The Waterford reactor, the Grand Gulf, and the Riverbend. What's going on is not an accident. It's what I call an on purpose, where you tempt reality by not doing things you have to do in order to be safe. It's like not fixing your brakes and driving 100 miles an hour. You're going to crash.
Right. Exactly correct.
It's just, we can't call this stupidity. We can call it suicide.
No, it's not stupidity at all, because they have the data and they understand. Look, it's now pretty well determined that 3.5 hours after the power was lost at Fukushima, and that includes the non-existent diesel generators which were washed away, there was a full meltdown, at least in reactor 1. TEPCO is saying, well, kind of looks like maybe the same thing happened in 2 and 3. Well,
yeah.
Let's just put the BS aside here. We had a triple meltdown in literally hours after the earthquake and tsunami. Triple meltdown, full meltdown. Those rods are all busted up. They're gone. They've turned into a molten pile of like lava slag, which is burbling and doing its thing, sitting in the bottom of the reactor vessel, probably through that into the containment vessel, and probably through that, and is now sitting on concrete. It'll eventually get through that as well. So it's the China syndrome.
Right. The fact is that the latest reports, and these are literally within the last few hours, Tokyo Electric are finally admitting, and this was in Reuters news, that the March 11 earthquake caused very early on reactors and fuel rods. 3 of all plant's reactors were in crisis and all melting down. As you say, and the fact is that it was a 9-level earthquake way out in the ocean, but it wasn't a 9 at the reactor building. It was maybe a 6 or 6.5. So what we're saying is that long before the tsunami struck, those plants were not structurally sound, and they already had breached the reactor, which, of course, the NRC still tries to say here in America that there's no way that the reactor containment will be breached, which, of course, Arnie Gunderson went over very well in this video on Vimeo today. So the fact is that they don't have safety measures here in America to deal with a big earthquake. They don't have safety measures with 4 to 8 hour batteries. Most of them are 4 hour. They don't have backup systems to keep the reactors cool. They haven't started to follow the safety measures to make certain that the fire suppression systems don't have electrical fires. I mean, it's a laundry list of suicidal stupidity.
Well, I'd call it a laundry list of accessory to mass murder.
Yeah, exactly. And I live within 20 miles of San Onofre. They have a tsunami wall capable of covering a 30-foot wall of water. Not only that, a lot of the nuclear plants on the East Coast could be swamped simply by tidal surge, even if it's not a tsunami.
Right.
And the fact is, off the coast of California, the fault subduction zone is only 5 miles off the coast. Now it's 75 to 100 miles off as it is in Japan. So a small subduction fault slip will cause a tsunami that could easily swamp that plant and cause it to go Fukushima. That's a new term I'm going to call it now. When it goes Fukushima, which means everything is, as they say in the military, FUBAR.
Same thing, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Only this is nuclear FUBAR, and it's on purpose. It's like driving with all the lug nuts off your wheels.
The planning of these reactors, 55 of them in Japan, most of which are sitting directly on or very, very near the ocean front, was insane from the beginning. There never should have been any nuclear fission reactors built in Japan. Right. It's the earthquake capital of the world. It's sitting on 3 major subduction faults, tectonic plates, whatever you want to call them. They have earthquakes all day long, every day. If you look at a live, active, animated rendition of the earthquake map of Japan, your jaw will drop. It's covered with earthquakes constantly.
Since the Fukushima, they've had at least 5 to 6 per day that are a 5+.
That's right.
5 to 6 a day. It's like, if that happened here in California, we'd be all freaked out. But that fact is, that happens every day.
The reactor building in Fukushima, number 4, the wrecked building number 4, is leaning. I don't know if you've seen it, folks. It was clearly ascertained with somebody simply took a snap of it, a grab, and drew some 90-degree lines over it. It's leaning. It's leaning more now. I don't know if you saw this the other day, Bill, but that building is leaning probably, if it was 15 degrees before, it may be leaning 20 degrees now.
Well,
it's clearly leaning over.
It's going to spread a lot more radiation. The whole site is so radioactive, including the groundwater that got into building number 6
right
in the basement there.
Right.
It means the entire site it makes it impossible for humans to stay anywhere on the site and do any real work to try to get containment. Now, they're never going to get cold shut down.
No.
They're never going to be able to move this radiation from this site to any other place, including Mongolia, as has been proposed. The best they can do is get what I call long-term containment, which means put tents over the thing so they can contain the air and filter it, build a wall around the building so that the water doesn't get into the Pacific Ocean, contain the groundwater in that zone, and then have remotely operated robots that have to maintain this for centuries. I don't see how they're going to do anything with the groundwater. It's already clearly spread all over the place. Well, it got into it got into the local community. I read the reports today that there
Yeah.
are groundwater into the sewage systems of a local community, which means God knows how many miles this has traveled
That's
through
right.
the underground aquifers and everything.
That's right. That's right. This is not a situation that is resolvable. It's not soluble. It is not dealable. And no one is saying that except a few people. And
once we accept the fact that the things that they talk about that they're going to get in January 2012 will never be achieved, and then maybe we can start from a position of total failure to do something.
maybe that's the realization that has to be accepted and talked about openly and honestly, and they need to call the world scientists in to help them.
Out of the box.
All right, back in a minute. Okay, and welcome back. If you go to the top of Rense.com on the center column for the Japan nuclear disaster featured story, look at the top story there. It's there for you 24 hours a day. Real-time World Earthquake Monitor. Click on that, and then click on Japan. It's on the left. You'll figure it out. Look at the circles. Click again, and it'll pull up a page. And that page says Seismic Monitor Events List window. And it shows the most current, up-to-date earthquakes. Now, this is for all of Japan, mind you. Let's see. In the first 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. Over 30 different earthquakes, all but 2 of them, say, off east coast of Honshu, Japan, or near east coast of Honshu, Japan. Honshu is the island where Fukushima is located. All right? Now, listen to this. I'm going to read the Richter magnitudes, just to knock off a few of them for you. 4.8, 5.4, 4.7, 5.6, 4.9, 4.9, 4.6, 4.8, 4.6, 4.6, 5.8, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 5.0, 4.6, 4.7, 5.5, 4.9, 5.1, 5.1, 4.6, 4.7, 4.7. All right. So the point is, there was a tremendous amount of energy that was displaced in the big quake. These can be viewed as dissipation quakes. I don't think they're going to do the job. There is supposedly an enormous amount of energy now stacked up as these tectonic plates continue to move. And we know that the actual landmass was moved 72 feet, and I think raised by 10 feet. So this is another loaded gun waiting to go off at any time. And if there is a 7 or 7.5, Building 4 will come down. There's going to be hell to pay. If you think it's been bad until now, it's going to get worse. And keep in mind that a number of other Japanese nuclear plants are in serious trouble, which we're not being told about.
Right, and they're also multi-site plants, which means when one facility gets damaged, like the unit number 5 over at the Hamioka plant, it makes it dangerous for the workers around other sites if you get a major displacement of radioactive waste.
Right.
And we now know, for example, that the cooling pool of reactor building 4 wasn't the source of the plutonium. It was the hydrogen-generated nuclear explosion in the cooling pool of Unit 3, the MOX reactor. And when they tried to start cooling it last week, it actually shot up 80 degrees Celsius, which means they're producing more transient criticality reactions. So they're having more nuclear events. Right.
The latest is about Building 4 that's leaning, I'd say 20 degrees. It's just about like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They're going to try and shore the building up. Well, they dropped that, and TEPCO changed its language. Now, these are interesting little things. You got to read carefully. They said now they're going to attempt to shore up the bottom of the spent fuel pool in Building 4. So they've kind of put the building itself on hold because the immediate danger is that the bottom of the spent fuel pool could give way, dumping hundreds of tons of probably MOX fuel rods included, spent fuel rods into the debris. Once that happens, it's over. You do not deal with that. It's not confined. It gets down in the cracks and crevices through uncountable tons of debris. You're going to have a fire that'll burn and burn and burn and burn. And the more water they throw on it, the more water goes right into the ocean, goes into the groundwater table. And they do another thing that's very, very disconcerting. They play the, I don't know what isotope it is game. They never tell you what isotopes they're dealing with. They talk about sieverts, millisieverts. They don't say what. And they know what, but they don't talk about it.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that Arnie mentioned was that they're detecting iodine-131 when they went into Building 3, which means there's new reactions because iodine-131 has a short half-life of 8 days.
Yeah.
And also, they're noticing when you look at the UC Berkeley data in their food sampling, it's showing up even at the end of April that we're still picking up, even into May, we're still picking up lots of isotopes of cesium-134 and 137. 134 is shorter half-life. 137 is a half-life of 30 years, which means these are going to persist in the soil for hundreds of years. And the 134 indicates that there's new reactions occurring, which is poisoning and progressively increasing the burden of radioisotopes in our food, air, and water.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's really Americans. I'm sorry, not you people. Bless every one of you. The bulk of America is so dumbed. It's hard to hold them responsible when they've literally had the smarts bred out of them by design. There's
it's part of
left.
education. In fact, if you put your hand up in class and question the teacher with a question that puts him on the spot, you get your grade down or you get harassed.
Yeah. No, they don't. You step out of the herd, you try to achieve and make something yourself, and the herd will drag you right back down by cutting you off from your social status in the school. And then
and there's more in the professional schools like medical, legal, engineering,
sure.
The same thing.
Remember what happened in England when the middle school kids and high school kids were caught actually trying to flunk tests so they wouldn't have good grades, so they wouldn't be belittled by their peer groups? That's the same thing over here. Same thing. No, it's bad. Hold on, we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Bill mentioned Arnie Gunderson. I'm going to play a couple excerpts from Arnie's most recent wonderful analysis. And keep in mind that UC Berkeley is can you believe this? The only institute of so-called higher learning that's doing any public data monitoring. Oh, others are monitoring. But Berkeley's when's the last time you heard anything from the EPA? You haven't. The FDA? You haven't. And you won't. The lid is on, and we're being sacrificed, and they're not going to tell us. And we'll be back. Okay, back with you, great people who care, and Dr. Bill Deagle. I'd also like to mention, if I can briefly, that Rense.com is having a spring fund support drive, and anything you can do to help will be profoundly appreciated. We work around the clock, 7 days a week, and it's difficult. We're in a depression. People don't have a lot of money, but this is a vital lifeline to what we believe is the best presentation of reality. I won't call it the truth because that word has been so besmirched. that we can find to bring to you, and we do constantly. The IAEA, by the way, the International Atomic Energy Association, to let you know, give you an idea how corrupt all of these bodies, including the NRC, maybe especially the American NRC, was informed in March that Reactor 1 had a core melt begin less than an hour after the cooling stopped. And it was completely melted down into a pile of molten magma less than 4 hours total time after the power was stopped. That's bad. Now, around the actual reactor containment vessel itself, the reactor vessel itself is the reactor containment vessel, which was supposed to be pressurized and have no vents. Well, they put vents in them. For what? It was a Band-Aid fix on a problem that should never have been there in the first place because of the poor design of these containment vessels. The containment vessels in many reactors have leaked over the years. They just do. These are stainless steel, I believe, and over time, as Bill has pointed out in past programs, and as you know, the heat and contraction issue fatigues all metal, and they begin to crack. Now, Arnie Gunderson talked about these containment vessels around the reactors themselves and how crappy they are. Now, these are BWR reactors, boiling water reactors, made by GE. Mark I, they call them. We have how many here in the States, Bill? It's 23, isn't it?
Yeah, 23 boiling water reactors. 14 are virtually identical to the Mark I reactor designed at TEPCO. And
we have 15 nuclear power plants sitting on the New Madrid Fault, which we'll talk about later. I don't know how many BWRs are on there. They're also around the world. We've given other first world countries this wonderful blessing of the GE Mark I BWR. Here's Arnie Gunderson talking about now remember, this is the containment. The containment was designed to keep any radiation that might ever leak from the reactor from getting out. Fat chance. Here's Arnie Gunderson.
Today I wanted to talk about the lessons that can be learned worldwide for the operating nuclear reactors that are already done and in use, not under construction. The first and most obvious thing is the containment. Containments were made to contain radioactivity. The vents you hear about and how they failed were an add-on. Back in the 70s and 80s, when these plants were designed, they weren't designed to have a vent. As a matter of fact, the pressurized water reactors around the world don't have a vent even now. So these containment vents were a Band-Aid fix to a problem that was identified after they were built. Now, the vents have been tested 3 times, at Fukushima 1, Fukushima 2, Fukushima 3, and they failed 3 times. That's a 100% failure rate. That's an indication that this design is seriously flawed, and it can happen here. It can happen in Germany, where they also have this type of reactor, and at the other BWR reactors around the world. So first and foremost, the vent system that's on every boiling water reactor needs to be evaluated to see if it can be made better or it should be eliminated. And if it's eliminated, what should we do about the containment that can't withstand the pressures of an accident? Vents can also cause problems. For instance, here in Vermont, the reactor is designed to be pressurized after an accident to push water into it. Well, if they open the vent and it stays open, they'll lose that pressure and they won't be able to cool the reactor. So we can have a meltdown. That doesn't apply just here. That applies at Dresden. It applies at H.B. Robinson and other plants. The NRC allowed this to happen. They allowed utilities to take credit for the containment pressure to push the water to the pumps. There's regulations on the book prohibiting that, but the NRC waived those regulations when they increased the power at Dresden and Vermont Yankee, Robinson, and some others. So it's important to remember that vents were designed to prevent a problem, overpressure of the containment, but now they can actually create a problem if, when they're open, they don't close. And if you take a look at Fukushima, it's hard to believe that you can guarantee those valves will close after an accident. Well, I've been on the NRC's case about containment leakage for a long time. At Beaver Valley, there was a hole in the side of the containment. I brought that to their attention several years ago. The full report's on the website. At Fitzpatrick, there was a crack in the side of the containment. I brought that to the NRC's attention last year. And at Millstone, it has the smallest containment for the power output of any of the type of reactor in the world. I brought that to the NRC's attention about 2 years ago. And they actually said for Millstone that they don't have the capability to analyze containments. It's in the notes. Yet, the NRC still assumes that containments will not leak. They've actually said that in an advisory committee to reactor safeguards meeting back in October of last year.
Containments will not leak. Containments will not leak, says the NRC. A more blatant, outrageous lie I've never heard.
It's amazing, isn't it? Considering not only the heat and the time, these are often very old reactors, but also the neutron insertion that anneals the metal and causes a form called neutron metal annealing that makes them literally ready to rupture like an overcooked eggshell.
And we have massive containment leakage at Fukushima 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4.
Right.
They're putting water in, folks, 400 tons an hour into number 3. And where is it going?
Yeah.
The level's not rising. A similar amount in number 1. The water's going right out. And it's going into the groundwater, as Bill said. It's going into the ocean. And they're lying.
Poisoning the planet.
Literally. Remember, plutonium was found 50 kilometers away from Fukushima Daiichi. 50 kilometers. That's admitted. And that was found in a rice paddy by an independent company. So, anyway, hang on. We'll be right back. Okay, back with Dr. Bill Deagle. So, Bill, the containments are obviously destroyed. They're non-functional. The water's pouring out of them as fast as they can put it in, basically. And at least 2 of the 3 that I've been able to track. It's difficult, but we know they're all 3 compromised. They have holes in them, large holes. That's where the water's going. Otherwise, they'd fill up. Not happening. So, what are the options for the Japanese? What do they do?
The first thing they need to do is change the whole game plan and not talk about putting in condensers or coolers, but simply trying to stop further hydrogen explosions, trying to filter the air and put up some kind of a wall around the plant, far enough around that the contained under